Hello everyone, I'm here today to do a review of all the books on the long list for the Warwick Prize for Women in Translation 2021. I am reading all of the long list going back from the beginning of the prize in 2017, and I am currently in 2021. And in this list there were 17 books, and I have actually attempted all of them. I DNF'd one, but I have attempted all of them, which I think is the first time that happens. Sometimes there's always like one that is too difficult to get, or one that I'm really not that interested about that I skip, but in this one I tried all of them. And as a list, I think it was pretty strong. The long list for me had an average rating of 3.07 and the short list 2.97. So to me, 2.5 book is an okay book, so anything above that is above average, and I think in this one there were quite a few favorites for me, so I'm very happy about this list. So now I'm going to go through the list in the order of the one that I like the least to the one I like the most. So in the first spot of I didn't like it, it's In Memory of Memory by Maria Stepanova, and this was supposed to be a book about objects that this woman finds in her house. It's kind of a non-fiction, and it does tell the story of Maria Stepanova's family, but it actually just felt completely irrelevant and disjointed. A friend of mine said that it was like, you know, when someone goes on holidays and then they come back with a million photos and they are showing them to you and you're nodding there like, haha, yeah, that's nice, but they're actually just photos of the room or whatever in the hotel, and you're completely uninterested. That's how this book felt. There was nothing in it that was captivating. She is a poet, and the writing was quite elaborate, but didn't gel with me. I didn't like it. It was a slog to get through, and I slogged my way through this. In second place is Grove by Kinsky, and this is the one that I actually DNF'd, and I didn't DNF it because it was the worst, obviously, but I had read Something Like Hers previously, and I realized that this was gonna be the same, and I just didn't care enough. Basically, it's about a woman kind of walking through a cemetery and having random thoughts about random things, and it's completely disconnected. It is connected in the sense that it is this woman walking and having these thoughts, but there is no point to these thoughts. There's nothing there to drive your home about. I don't like disjointed random thoughts. I think that's the theme of these bad books for me. I know that the writing of both of these books is very elaborate, and for some people it will work really well, but for me, I need something more than just pretty writing, and I need a message or a story or something to tie everything together, a character study, a thesis, something, and none of these books had any of that for me, so for me, again, this didn't work. In third place, I have War of the Beasts and Animals by Maria Stepanova as well. She had 2 books in this list, and this is a poetry collection. As I said, she's a poet, and this is her poetry. And I thought, after hating In Memory of Memory, I thought, let's try the poetry, let's just see how this goes. And I mean, it went a little bit better because it's poetry, so it's not as long as much, but it's just not for me. The random thoughts, very fragmented, not really anything of substance that I could get my teeth on, so this unfortunately again did not work for me, so I think I'm done with Maria Stepanova. The next book is Arid Dreams by Duawan Pamada, and this is a collection of short stories about daily life, and I like some of the stories. I thought some of the messages were interesting, but overall it just didn't stay with me at all, so that's why it's so low in the list. It's not because it's bad, but it's kind of forgettable for me. The next book in this list is Strange Beasts of China by Yang Ge, and this is actually quite an interesting experiment. So this is kind of like written almost like a non-fiction book about different animals that are supposed to live in China but are not, actually not real, like let's say dragons, and then they give you all the descriptions of the dragon and their habits and stuff like that, and through those stories it's trying to get some sort of message across, and I thought the idea was very cool, but I didn't gel with the execution as much as I wanted it to work for me. So I did like the world building, but at the end of the day this was a bit too weird for me, and I think partly it's because I don't have the background to understand the metaphors that this book was trying to make. So it's partly on me and partly not all on the book. But yeah, for me it just I couldn't grasp what this was about. So yeah, I think it is probably a good book, but I just didn't get it. Then the next book in this list is not a novel by Jenny Erpenbeck, and this is a collection of different thoughts. I thought this was going to be more of a memoir, because the subtitle is a memoir in pieces, but it was more of a collection of thoughts. So again, not my favorite kind of thing. It was divided in 3 parts: life, literature, and music, and something like social world, whatever, and I did like her thoughts on her life, reflections on her life, and the reflections on how the world works today. So that, I did really enjoy those parts, but the majority of the book was the chunk that was the biggest was about literature and music, which is a topic that I'm not particularly interested in, and therefore this book was also not 100% for me, unfortunately. But if you are into those things, you probably would really enjoy this book. The next book in this list is An Inventory of Losses by Judith Scholastique, however that is pronounced. And this was sort of a collection of stories based on objects. I think the judges of this year's prize, they were really into like fragmented things, because this kind of goes through history and takes things that have been forgotten and kind of tells the story of these things that have been forgotten, and I think that it did a very good job at that. The writing was great. I really enjoyed the reading experience. However, I read this maybe a year ago and I barely remember anything that was in there, so that tells me that it's somewhat forgettable, but still an interesting concept that I would like to see done in different ways and see if one of them works for me better. The next book in the list is Little Dancer Age 14 by Camille, and this was a non-fiction piece about this Degas sculpture that he made about the little dancer in Paris, in the Opera of Paris. And this book kind of goes through the conditions in which these dancers worked and lived, and it was really grim. People tend to think of dancers as these like very glamorous things, but at this time it was the very poor people that almost went into slavery as dancers, and they were also expected to give their sexual favors to the patrons of the opera, these 13, 14, 15-year-old girls, and so I really enjoyed that part, the part that explains the living conditions of these people and why they did what they did and what kind of things they had to do to survive. I thought that was very poignant. The part that this book didn't succeed at, I think, it was that it was trying to follow this particular girl within that environment that was immortalized by Degas, and there's not a lot known about this girl, and this book tried to find more things out about this girl, and they didn't. So it was kind of like a failed experiment of trying to find this information. So in that sense, yeah, it was a bit of a failure of research, but I think that the overall picture of how these people lived was quite interesting. The next book is People from My Neighbourhood by Hiromi Kawakami, and this book is sort of a collection of short stories, not quite, but it's kind of this boy that goes through his neighborhood and tells the story of the different people in the neighborhood. It has a very Japanese stripped down language, but also very whimsical, which I think it's very Japanese in my understanding. And I really enjoyed the way that it was written. I think the story itself was very forgettable because it was completely very everyday kind of things, but the writing was very good. The next book in the list is Our Lady of the Nile by Scholastique Mukasonga, and this was about boarding school for girls in Rwanda, and it's kind of just before the genocide. So we mostly follow the going-ons in the school, the relationship between the different girls and also between the girls and the teachers. There is a very questionable relationship between one of the students and one of the teachers, and that it's very uncomfortable to read. And then at the end of the book we see the start of this genocide movements starting in Rwanda, which is very scary, but it's not the focus of the book. It's more about the social norms within Rwanda, what's the different tribes, what dynamics they had, and what were the conventions that were used before genocide. I think it was well done. It was very, as I said, very uncomfortable to read, which I think it was part of the point, but it was not enjoyable to read because of the subject matter. So it was not my favorite, but it was still a good book. The next book in this list is A Girl's Story by Annie Ernaux, and I have a very complicated relationship with Annie Ernaux's books. This, I think it's one of the ones that I like the most from her. It tells the story of her youth and the bad things that happened when she was very young, and I think she makes very poignant and very interesting points about the dynamics of relationships when you're young and stuff like that. But the problem I have with Annie Ernaux is that there are parts in which it always feels like she's so full of herself, and it's so grinding for me. So this was no exception. There were those parts here as well that I did not enjoy at all. But at the end of the day, the points that she's trying to make with this book, I really enjoy and I really agree with. So yeah, as I said, love-hate relationship. The next book in the list is Ellis Island by Malgorzata Sjenet. Probably butchered that. This book was about the people that came to the US through Ellis Island in New York, and the immigration process and the way that people try to get in and pass by other nationality or race because it was more favored in that particular time in the US. And so we go through the very difficult and interesting process of immigration in the 1800s, I think. Yeah, 1800s, 1900s, I think. It was very interesting how they define the different things. Like, for example, races, like Italian was a race, whatever that means. I mean, races don't make sense anyway, but it was very interesting to see the different definitions of nationalities and races and things. It also touched upon the people that work in Ellis Island, so the immigration officers and the difference between the different ones, the actual morals that they were trying to follow, things like that. So it was a very interesting dynamic, and I think this book was quite interesting in the way that it looked at the immigration stories of the US. The next book in the list is Breast and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami, and this is about a woman that is considering having a child through a donor, basically, and all the moral implications that might cause, and she does a lot of research on how donor conceived children feel about it, and yeah, it was a very interesting exploration of that kind of thing that I've never seen before. And also a big character of this book is her sister, who has a daughter, and so she went through a different path to become a mother. She had a husband and that relationship was not great. So it kind of explores the different ways in which people can become mothers, and it was a very interesting exploration of motherhood in general and of sperm donation in particular, which are things that, I mean, I have seen motherhood explored in books before, but maybe not in the actual how do you create a child and what are the different options and different consequences kind of way. So this was very interesting to look into. And the next book was The Pear Field by Nana Ekvtimishvili, and this was about an orphanage in the middle of the rural area in Georgia and how horribly the children were treated there, basically. There is in particular one girl that we follow that she grew up there, and when she is older she decides to stay there and work there, and she starts everyone thinks that she's a little bit stupid, but we find out that she discovers things about the place that are really disturbing, and we just follow her on that journey. And yeah, it was a very sad book, and very very sad, but it was a very well written, and yeah, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it because it's not an enjoyable book, but it is a very well written book, and I appreciated what it was doing. The next book in the list is The Art of Losing by Alice Senator, and this is about 3 generations of Algerian immigrants to France. So we follow the child of the immigrants, which is kind of the one that is narrating the book, and then we go back also to see the father, who is the one that migrated, and the grandfather, who was the one that fought for independence and then migrated to France, taking the child, who was the father of this woman that writes the story, basically. And it was a very interesting way to tell the story in the 3 different perspectives. I think that particularly for me, the perspective of the father, who migrated to France as a child. His parents took him there after the independence, was very interesting to see, because normally what I have seen is immigrant children from now and not immigrant children in the 70s or 80s, and I think that was that added a lot to the book. But overall I think it was a very heartfelt explanation and experience, and I really enjoyed the way that it was written, and also the way that it explored the history of Algeria, the independence war, the immigration, the relationship between Algeria and France. Algeria at the time when it was a colony, it was not considered a colony, it was just considered part of France, which was quite different from the other colonies that were actual colonies, let's say exploitation colonies, whereas Algerian people were considered French people. And so that dynamic was very interesting to see, and I think this book did a fantastic job at exploring all of those things, of colonialism and race and immigration, and it was very good. Then the next book in the list is Minor Detail by Adania Sibley. This is a very short book about Palestine, and it's divided in 2 parts. The first part, it's on the 60s, 50s, something like that. It's about a Palestinian girl that is found in the desert, and she's brought into the desert by soldiers, Israeli soldiers, and the things that they do to her are horrible, and the way they treat her is horrible. And then we move into present day in the second part, and we follow this woman that becomes obsessed with researching what happened with this little girl, because I believe that she died on this woman's birthday or something like that. I don't remember the exact details of that, but anyway, she becomes obsessed trying to find out more about this girl. So she keeps researching, and her life starts to mimic the life of this girl, and in very disturbing ways. And it was a very interesting way to do it. It's an amazing way to show the Palestinian conflict and how bad it is, how bad it was, but also how bad it is now. And I think it was brilliant. So yeah, highly recommend. And then the last book that I want to talk about, which is probably my favorite, is The Employees by Olga Raven. So The Employees is it's a collection of transcripts from this spaceship, and some of the transcripts are from humans and some of the transcripts are from robots, and we are not told which one is which, and at some point you start questioning which one is which. And so basically this book explores what makes us human, and if some humans are really humans and some robots are not humans after all, if they have the same feelings and the same behaviors, wouldn't that be human? Very interesting exploration of what being human is, I think, and done in a very impactful way as well. It didn't feel pretentious, or it didn't feel like dumbed down, which I really appreciated, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, the last 3 books I've talked about are all favorites of mine, so yeah, I was really happy with this list. I think it has some really great things in the list. However, the winner of this year was An Inventory of Losses, which, as I said, it was a good book for me, just not an amazing one. I think that it was forgettable compared to other books. Like the fact that Minor Detail has not won any huge awards baffles me, and this was a great opportunity for it to win something, but it didn't. Also, I think The Employees was great. The Art of Losing was great. Those would have been my favorites to win, but well, The Inventory of Losses won. I think this jury really liked fragmented memory stories, and this was one of them. So yeah, to each their own, but yeah, overall I really enjoyed the long list. And let me know if you also have enjoyed any of these books. Let's chat in the comments down below, and until next video, bye!